I'm Dylan Burgess, 42 years old, and for the last 15 years, I've been the senior infrastructure engineer at Thornton Technologies. My role has been far from just maintaining servers or overseeing a few networks. I've been the backbone of our entire IT infrastructure, the guy responsible for ensuring that the systems supporting roughly $8.5 million in annual revenue run seamlessly. When you're entrusted with that kind of critical responsibility, it means every decision, every protocol, every line of code matters. Over the years, I developed, maintained, and optimized a proprietary infrastructure architecture that supports around 50,000 users. Uptime? We consistently held a 99.99% record. That's not just a number to me. It's the measure of countless hours spent designing fail-safes, backup protocols, and disaster recovery plans that keep the business alive and thriving. On that Friday last week, everything changed abruptly. I was called into a meeting with Mark Thornton Jr., the CFO's son, who had recently been positioned as the interim IT manager, a decision driven more by nepotism than expertise, as I would soon confirm. The meeting was brief, cold, and delivered without the respect that a professional with my years of service deserved. Mark Jr. looked at me, not with the appreciation of my expertise, but with thinly veiled disdain. He said, almost dismissively, "Your outdated methods are holding us back." To hear those words after dedicating a decade and a half to building and stabilizing this company's infrastructure was more than just disheartening. It was a professional affront. What made it worse was that this wasn't a conversation to improve or modernize the systems collaboratively. It was a termination notice disguised as a critique. Without allowing room for dialogue, he handed me my termination letter. The document was terse, citing outdated methods as the justification for immediate dismissal, effectively ignoring years of documented successes and critical safeguards I put in place. I remember the calmness I forced myself to maintain in that moment. I slid my badge across the table, the weight of years of dedication symbolically resting on the cold surface. I looked Mark Jr. in the eye and said, "You have 24 hours before everything crashes. Tell your father I said good luck." My tone was measured, professional, not a threat but a statement of fact grounded in my intimate knowledge of our infrastructure's complexities. I knew what I was saying. I wasn't bluffing. From the moment I walked out of that meeting, my mind was racing, but my strategy was clear and methodical. I had no intention of reacting emotionally or burning bridges irrationally. Instead, I began to piece together the internal plans that would soon become the foundation of my professional response. I reviewed every blueprint in my head, the proprietary network topologies, the failover systems I meticulously documented, the backup protocols embedded deeply into our company policy. I knew where the vulnerabilities were and how my absence would expose them. This wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. I understood that Mark Jr., young, inexperienced, and perhaps overconfident, had no real grasp of the legacy systems he was now tasked with managing. The infrastructure I had built was complex, intertwined, and required not just technical know-how but years of hands-on experience. I also knew that my dismissal hadn't followed contractual protocols, which gave me legal leverage I was determined to use. In that moment of professional betrayal, I made a mental note to document everything meticulously, the termination process, the conversations, the systems changes that would follow. I knew that the coming 24 hours would be critical, not only for the company's infrastructure, but for my own professional vindication. My plan was to watch closely, prepare to act strategically, and ensure that any systemic failure could be traced back to the reckless dismissal of proven expertise. The calmness I maintained was deliberate. I wasn't just an engineer, I was a guardian of a delicate ecosystem. And as I placed my badge on the table, I wasn't just relinquishing access. I was signaling the start of a process that would expose the true cost of dismissing experience for nepotism. I knew the stakes, and I was ready. Over the past 15 years at Thornton Technologies, my role extended far beyond routine maintenance. I was entrusted with safeguarding the entire backbone of the company's IT infrastructure. When I first joined as a systems engineer, the organization operated on fragmented legacy systems, inefficient, costly, and prone to failure. Recognizing the critical need for stability and scalability, I spearheaded a comprehensive initiative to optimize these legacy systems, refining network architectures, streamlining data flows, and implementing fail-safe protocols that minimized downtime. These efforts cumulatively saved the company approximately $2 million annually, a figure I meticulously tracked through quarterly IT financial reports and performance audits. One of my proudest accomplishments was designing and maintaining a proprietary network architecture tailored specifically to Thornton Technologies' unique operational needs. This architecture supported about 50,000 users across multiple departments, all relying on seamless connectivity and uninterrupted access to critical applications. The complexity of this network demanded more than just technical know-how. It required deep institutional knowledge of legacy configurations, hardware limitations, and evolving business requirements. Over the years, I developed and documented over 300 technical schematics, mapping every node, server cluster, and data pipeline. These blueprints weren't just diagrams, they were living documents regularly updated to reflect upgrades, patches, and security adjustments. In 2015, after demonstrating consistent results in both crisis mitigation and infrastructure modernization, I was promoted to Senior Infrastructure Engineer. This role expanded my responsibilities to include the development and enforcement of backup protocols and disaster recovery plans, procedures now embedded as mandatory company policy. The disaster recovery framework I implemented was comprehensive. It detailed step-by-step procedures for various failure scenarios, from power outages to cyber attacks, ensuring that the company could restore operations within hours rather than days. This framework was audited annually by external compliance officers, and I personally oversaw the drills that validated system resilience. My commitment to documentation and transparency extended to client relationships as well. Long-term clients often expressed confidence in Thornton Technologies' reliability, a trust I helped cultivate through clear communication regarding system updates and performance metrics. This trust translated into client retention rates significantly above the industry average, directly impacting revenue stability. I ensured that every infrastructure change was logged and communicated in monthly IT reports, which were reviewed by senior management and external auditors alike. Despite these achievements, my position and compensation, $118,000 annually, along with vested benefits, made me a target during recent budget cuts. The company sought to reduce operational costs under CFO Mark Thornton Sr.'s directive, and my salary was viewed as expendable compared to the potential savings from employing less experienced, lower-paid personnel. This was despite explicit data showing that my infrastructure optimizations had effectively paid for themselves many times over. Throughout my tenure, I remained vigilant about emerging technologies, integrating modern tools where they complemented legacy systems without introducing risk. This balanced approach often led to my methods being labeled as outdated by less experienced staff unfamiliar with the intricate dependencies within our infrastructure. However, my focus was always on stability and compliance rather than chasing trends at the expense of system integrity. The culmination of this 15-year professional commitment was the robust, scalable infrastructure that propelled Thornton Technologies' operations forward, supporting millions in revenue with near-perfect uptime. This was not simply a job for me. It was a strategic responsibility I executed with precision and foresight. Every system diagram, every backup schedule, every risk assessment was a testament to my dedication and expertise. Losing this role abruptly, under the pretext of outdated methods, was a stark misrepresentation of my professional value. A misstep I knew would have significant consequences for the company. As I walked out of my meeting with Mark Thornton Jr., I carried not only the weight of 15 years of work, but also the certainty that my deep understanding and meticulous documentation would be the foundation for holding the company accountable. My professional record was not just history. It was a strategic resource I planned to deploy with precision in the hours and days to come. Mark Thornton Jr. was 28 years old, young, ambitious, and recently installed as interim IT manager. His appointment was less a reflection of merit and more a clear case of nepotism. From the start, it was apparent that he was eager to prove his worth quickly, but his enthusiasm was not tempered by the experience or understanding necessary for managing an infrastructure as complex and mission-critical as ours. While I recognized the importance of modernization, Mark Jr.'s approach was impulsive and short-sighted, lacking the strategic foresight demanded by the legacy systems he was suddenly responsible for. He aggressively pushed for rapid modernization initiatives, advocating to strip away what he dismissed as outdated infrastructure, without a thorough analysis of the intricate dependencies and failover mechanisms embedded deeply into our network. For instance, he insisted on decommissioning legacy servers that, although old, were integral to our failover clusters and disaster recovery protocols. My experience had shown me that these systems, while based on older technology, were heavily customized and patched over years to meet compliance requirements and ensure resilience. Removing them without exhaustive testing and phased migration would expose the company to significant downtime and regulatory risk. Mark Jr.'s lack of technical depth was compounded by a dangerous overconfidence. He disregarded the warnings I and my senior colleagues raised during multiple meetings and email exchanges. He often waved off detailed technical assessments, treating them as roadblocks rather than essential safeguards. His initiative to overhaul core systems without consulting the larger IT team or conducting risk assessments was a glaring oversight. For example, he had begun implementing new configurations that conflicted with the network's core routing protocols, threatening data integrity and user access across departments. These changes had not been mapped against the 300-plus technical schematics I maintained, the very blueprints that ensured continuity and compliance. What made this situation even more precarious was the CFO, Mark Thornton Sr., who was under increasing pressure to cut operational expenses. He saw Mark Jr. as appointment as a cost-saving measure, hoping to reduce payroll by $150,000 annually. My salary and benefits package, including vested benefits that were contractually protected, became a target. Unfortunately, Mark Sr. overlooked the fact that my compensation was justified by the very efficiencies and risk management protocols I had instituted. His focus on short-term savings blinded him to the long-term financial and reputational risks inherent in discarding established expertise. Another critical oversight by Mark Jr. and his father was their failure to grasp that I was the sole custodian of master passwords and encryption keys essential for system administration. This wasn't just about access. It was about having the institutional knowledge to manage complex failover systems. The infrastructure was built with multiple layers of security protocols that required precise coordination during updates or in emergency scenarios. Without my credentials and intimate understanding of these systems, the company's IT resilience was severely compromised. Moreover, my severance contract included a clause granting me continued access rights until a full audited system handover could be completed. This clause was designed to protect both parties and ensure operational stability during any transition. Ignoring this provision not only violated contractual obligations, but also exposed the company to compliance and operational risks. Mark Jr.'s assumption that he could immediately replace these access controls without proper authorization was reckless. What further compounded their misjudgment was an underestimation of regulatory compliance requirements tied to our infrastructure. We were subject to stringent audits involving data security, user privacy, and operational transparency. The legacy systems, though older, had been meticulously updated to meet evolving regulatory standards I continually monitored and documented. Unauthorized alterations, rushed decommissions, or improper credential transfers could trigger compliance failures with potential fines exceeding $500,000. These risks were not theoretical. They were grounded in documented audit reports and regulatory correspondence I had archived over the years. In summary, Mark Jr. His nepotism-driven appointment led to a critical leadership gap in managing an intricate and sensitive infrastructure. His eagerness to modernize, while understandable in principle, was executed without the requisite technical acumen or appreciation for the embedded complexity. His father's cost-cutting mandate further narrowed the focus to immediate financial gains, disregarding the operational stability and compliance safeguards I had established. Together, these factors set the stage for systemic vulnerabilities that would soon manifest, underscoring the high stakes of replacing seasoned expertise with inexperienced oversight. My intimate, proprietary knowledge of the infrastructure, combined with contractual protections, positioned me uniquely to respond strategically to this unfolding crisis. After leaving that terse meeting, the first order of business was to carefully review every piece of documentation related to my termination. The termination letter itself was terse, stating vague justifications about outdated methods, without any specific performance metrics or documented warnings that would normally precede such a drastic step. More troubling than the letter's language, however, were the attachments, or rather the conspicuous absence of them. The severance package I was contractually entitled to was missing entirely. My employment contract clearly stipulated that any termination without cause required full severance compensation, including vested benefits that amounted to $118,000. Yet the paperwork I received denied me any severance at all. Even more concerning was the revocation of my access rights. Per company policy and my contract, I maintained system credentials and master access keys necessary for managing critical infrastructure components. An explicit clause in my severance agreement guaranteed my continued access until a formal audited handover could be completed. This provision was not mere bureaucracy. It existed precisely to protect the company from operational risks during transitions. The documentation I was handed ignored this clause completely, effectively cutting off my access without any formal handover plan or validation procedure. From a legal standpoint, this was a clear breach of contract. I realized I needed to quickly gather concrete evidence of these contractual violations to build my professional case. I scanned all termination documents using my personal encrypted device, creating secure, time-stamped copies that would preserve their integrity for potential legal scrutiny. Then I cross-referenced the termination letter and severance denial with the original signed contracts stored in the company's secure HR system, contracts I had downloaded and archived periodically over the years for my own records. The discrepancies were undeniable. Simultaneously, I began an independent inquiry into recent system changes since my dismissal. Access logs, which I had routinely monitored via remote audit tools, revealed unauthorized modifications. The most alarming discovery was that Mark Thornton Jr. had already initiated the decommissioning of several critical servers. These weren't just any servers. They were integral nodes in our failover clusters, responsible for routing emergency traffic during outages. According to the logs, these decommissioning commands were executed without any consultation with the IT department or risk assessments from senior engineers. This reckless unilateral action violated established change management protocols documented in our IT governance manuals. Furthermore, financial records tied to my deferred benefits signaled irregularities. Payroll reports showed that the $118,000 in vested benefits I was contractually owed had been withheld under ambiguous pretenses. I flagged this as an evident case of financial misappropriation, warranting further investigation. I compiled these payroll summaries alongside contract clauses specifying severance entitlements to support a formal claim. Beyond contractual and financial breaches, I identified significant regulatory compliance risks arising from these unauthorized infrastructure changes. Our annual internal audits, which I had overseen, documented stringent requirements for maintaining data security, user privacy, and system integrity. Alterations to failover configurations without proper testing and documentation posed not just operational hazards, but exposed the company to potential fines exceeding $500,000 under state and federal IT compliance laws. I flagged these compliance gaps by extracting system audit reports and matching them with the recent unauthorized changes. To strengthen my case, I reviewed past email correspondence where I had explicitly warned management, including both Mark Jr. and CFO Mark Sr., about the risks of dismantling critical legacy systems prematurely. These emails, carefully archived in my company mailbox and backed up on external encrypted drives, demonstrated a clear record of professional caution and foresight on my part. I catalogued these warnings chronologically, highlighting instances where my concerns were dismissed or ignored. This correspondence formed a crucial evidentiary trail of management's negligence. In parallel, I identified multiple leverage points for legal and professional intervention. The breach of severance contract terms gave me grounds for a wrongful termination claim. The unauthorized system modifications opened avenues for regulatory complaints about compliance violations. The financial withholding of benefits suggested potential labor law infractions. Taken together, these constituted a multi-layered case against Thornton Technologies. Throughout this process, I maintained a methodical and detached approach. Rather than reacting impulsively, I documented everything with precision: copies of termination documents, detailed logs of system modifications, financial reports, and email threads. Each piece was catalogued with timestamps and metadata to ensure integrity. I even began creating a detailed spreadsheet mapping these findings against contractual clauses and compliance standards, which would later guide my legal strategy. This initial phase of discovery confirmed that my dismissal was not only unjust, but orchestrated recklessly, placing the entire infrastructure, and by extension, the company's $8.5 million annual revenue, at significant risk. Mark Jr.'s premature decommissioning of critical servers and disregard for established protocols evidenced a dangerous lack of understanding that could precipitate systemic failures. By the end of that first day post-termination, I had assembled a comprehensive dossier: proof of contract violations, evidence of financial malfeasance, documentation of unauthorized and risky infrastructure changes, and a trail of disregarded professional warnings. These materials formed the foundation for the next phase of my professional response, leveraging legal and technical mechanisms to hold the company accountable and protect the integrity of the systems I had dedicated my career to building. After assembling the initial evidence and cataloging the infractions, I knew the next step required professional legal guidance to ensure my approach was airtight. I reached out to Susan Marshall, an employment lawyer with a solid reputation for handling complex wrongful termination cases in the tech sector. Susan and I scheduled a series of consultations over the coming days, with the primary goals of enforcing the severance clauses outlined in my contract and asserting my legal right to retain system access during the transition period. Her expertise was crucial, not only to navigate the contractual nuances, but also to advise on regulatory compliance issues arising from the unauthorized infrastructure changes. Simultaneously, I dove back into organizing my extensive documentation archive, spanning the full 15 years of my tenure at Thornton Technologies. This wasn't just routine filing, it was a strategic curation of data. I gathered every pertinent document: detailed system blueprints, technical schematic revisions, change management logs, backup protocols, disaster recovery plans, and audit reports. Each file was meticulously catalogued with creation dates, revision histories, and cross-referenced notes highlighting system dependencies. Over 300 technical diagrams had been updated continuously to reflect infrastructure upgrades, security patches, and compliance adjustments, so maintaining accurate version control was vital. Beyond the technical schematics, I assembled all email correspondence that documented my repeated warnings about the risks of dismantling legacy systems prematurely. These emails, exchanged primarily with senior management and IT department leads, demonstrated my consistent professional diligence and foresight. I encrypted and duplicated these records on secure external drives, ensuring that no tampering or data loss could undermine their evidentiary value. Financial documentation was equally critical. I retrieved payroll statements and employment contracts outlining my vested benefits, severance entitlements, and clauses guaranteeing access rights until a formal system handover. These contractual elements were carefully annexed to my dossier, supported by time-stamped copies of the termination letter and related correspondence denying my severance, a clear breach of agreed terms. To further strengthen my position, I collected witness statements from trusted colleagues still employed at Thornton Technologies. These statements confirmed my role in maintaining system integrity and corroborated my concerns about the reckless actions taken by Mark Thornton Jr. I coordinated these testimonies through confidential communications, emphasizing the professional nature of my inquiry to avoid jeopardizing their positions. Each statement was drafted with precise language, focusing on observed facts rather than speculation, reinforcing the legal weight of my case. Parallel to organizing documentation, I conducted a rigorous analysis of the infrastructure vulnerabilities Mark Jr. had overlooked or exacerbated. Consulting my system monitoring tools and remote audit logs, some of which I had set up for emergency oversight, I mapped out the critical failover nodes and backup clusters at risk due to unauthorized decommissioning efforts. I created a detailed impact matrix quantifying potential revenue loss, regulatory penalty exposure, and client service disruptions, anchoring these assessments in real-time system metrics. With the technical and legal groundwork laid, I began formulating a multi-tiered strategic plan. This included formal enforcement of severance payments, legal challenges to unlawful access revocation, regulatory complaints, highlighting compliance breaches, and client notifications designed to preempt reputational damage. Each action required careful timing and documentation, ensuring that Thornton Technologies could not dismiss these issues as minor or isolated incidents. Throughout this phase, I maintained a disciplined focus, avoiding any impulsive communication that could undermine my professionalism. My approach was methodical: document, analyze, secure legal counsel, and proceed with measured precision. I also initiated contingency planning, preparing for potential escalation should Mark Jr. or company leadership attempt to obstruct investigations or further destabilize the systems. By the end of this phase, my dossier had grown into a comprehensive portfolio, an organized encrypted repository of technical schematics, contractual evidence, financial records, email correspondences, witness statements, and risk assessments. This portfolio was the backbone of my forthcoming legal and professional actions, enabling a precise, data-driven response to the wrongful termination and negligent infrastructure management I was confronting. In essence, this stage was about reclaiming control, leveraging my documented expertise and legal rights as tools to expose the vulnerabilities created by reckless leadership decisions. It was a careful, strategic preparation designed not only to protect my own professional interests, but to safeguard the critical systems that supported millions in revenue, a responsibility I could not take lightly. The careful cataloging and legal consultations set the stage for the enforcement actions that would follow, turning years of dedication and expertise into an unassailable professional case against Thornton Technologies' mismanagement. Susan Marshall's sharp eye caught the key contractual breaches immediately. As an employment lawyer with a decade of experience in wrongful termination and corporate compliance, she understood the gravity of what I was facing and what I had uncovered. We sat down together in her office, surrounded by stacks of my organized documentation, the severance agreement I'd been handed, my original employment contract, email correspondence, technical schematics, system audit reports, and payroll records. With her guidance, I began dissecting the legal implications embedded in these documents. The severance agreement I received was fundamentally flawed. It cited outdated methods as the cause for termination, a vague and unsubstantiated claim that failed to meet the contractual standard of cause. According to my employment contract, termination without cause mandated full severance compensation, including accrued benefits, yet the severance package had been entirely denied. Susan pointed out to me that this was a clear breach of contract. The company had effectively terminated me wrongfully and was unlawfully withholding $118,000 in vested benefits, a substantial financial injury. Moreover, the severance clause explicitly granted me system access rights until a formal audited handover could be completed, a critical safeguard to prevent operational disruptions. The company's unilateral revocation of these rights was not only a contractual violation, but dangerous from an operational standpoint. Beyond these overt breaches, Susan's legal review extended into regulatory compliance territory. My documentation included internal audit reports and compliance certificates, showing that Thornton Technologies was subject to stringent IT governance standards, covering data security, privacy, and operational continuity, mandated by state and federal regulators. These reports detailed the layered failover systems and encryption protocols I'd architected, all designed to prevent downtime and data loss. Unauthorized decommissioning of legacy servers by Mark Thornton Jr., as evidenced in system logs and change management records, violated internal policies and jeopardized compliance with regulations that carried fines upwards of $500,000. The company's actions exposed them to regulatory scrutiny and potential penalties, creating a multifaceted legal vulnerability. I presented Susan with a meticulously catalogued archive of over 300 technical schematics and backup protocols. These documents demonstrated that only I held the master passwords and had the institutional knowledge required to restore critical failover systems in the event of failure. This was not simply about access credentials, it was about the competence to manage a highly complex, proprietary infrastructure. Unauthorized changes without expert oversight risked catastrophic system failures. Susan recognized this as an essential element in building a case that underscored the recklessness of the company's management decisions. The email correspondences I provided were equally damning. They included multiple warnings I had sent over the past 6 months to both Mark Jr. and his father, CFO Mark Sr., about the dangers of dismantling critical legacy systems prematurely without thorough risk assessments. Each email was carefully timestamped and preserved in encrypted archives, verifying authenticity. Susan noted that these communications established a clear record that management had been informed of the risks, yet chose to ignore them, a factor that could weigh heavily in legal proceedings and regulatory investigations. Together, we mapped out a multi-pronged legal strategy. First, a formal demand for the immediate payment of my full severance package, including all accrued benefits, based on the explicit contractual breach. Second, the assertion of my right to maintain system access, pending a complete documented handover, critical not just for my own legal protections, but for the stability of the company's operations. Third, filing regulatory complaints highlighting the compliance violations stemming from unauthorized infrastructure modifications. And finally, preparing a formal notice regarding potential intellectual property misuse, given that proprietary improvements developed during my tenure were at risk of being improperly handled or claimed by unauthorized personnel. To support this legal framework, I continued to refine my dossier. I created a detailed spreadsheet cross-referencing contractual clauses, compliance mandates, and documented breaches, pairing each with supporting evidence, emails, system logs, audit reports, and financial records. This methodical approach ensured that every claim was substantiated with verifiable documentation, leaving no room for dispute. Throughout this process, I maintained a professional demeanor, cognizant that any emotional reaction could undermine the seriousness and credibility of my case. Susan and I scheduled follow-up meetings to monitor responses from Thornton Technologies' legal counsel and regulatory bodies. Meanwhile, I secured encrypted backups of all evidence on external drives physically stored outside the company's network, preserving the integrity of the data should there be any attempts at tampering. This phase was critical. It transformed what initially felt like a personal betrayal into a systematic, evidence-based legal challenge. I leveraged not only my technical expertise, but also the contractual terms and regulatory frameworks that governed Thornton Technologies' operations. The combination of wrongful termination, breach of contract, financial irregularities, and compliance violations constituted a robust, multifaceted case. As I left Susan's office that day, I had crystallized the professional foundation of my response. The next steps would involve formal enforcement actions and measured pressure, actions that required patience, precision, and unwavering adherence to documented facts. The company's failures were no longer hidden behind vague accusations or nepotistic assumptions. They were laid bare in the face of contractual and regulatory realities. My role had shifted from engineer to strategic professional advocate, poised to hold Thornton Technologies accountable on every front. After consolidating all the evidence and working closely with Susan Marshall, I moved decisively to initiate formal actions against Thornton Technologies. The first step was to serve legal notices directly to their corporate headquarters. These notices clearly outlined the breaches of my severance contract, including wrongful termination without cause, and the unlawful denial of my vested benefits totaling $118,000. The letter demanded immediate payment and reinstatement of my access rights, as stipulated in the contractual clause, guaranteeing continued system credentials until a full, audited handover. Each point referenced specific contract sections and appended relevant documentation to leave no room for ambiguity or evasion. Concurrently, We filed detailed complaints with the state IT regulatory agencies, tasked with overseeing compliance in critical infrastructure management. The complaint highlighted the unauthorized decommissioning of legacy servers, which violated internal change management protocols and jeopardized regulatory compliance standards related to data security, privacy, and operational continuity. We cited the audit reports I had meticulously maintained, which documented the multi-layered failover systems and backup protocols essential to meet these standards. Our filings underscored the company's exposure to potential fines exceeding $500,000 due to these infractions, positioning regulatory scrutiny as a powerful lever in the negotiation process. In parallel with these legal moves, I formally submitted a written request through Susan's office to Thornton Technologies' legal department, insisting on the restoration of my system access. This was not a mere convenience for me, but a contractual necessity and an operational imperative. Without authorized access to master passwords, encryption keys, and proprietary system blueprints, the company's IT infrastructure risked cascading failures. I referenced the clause in my severance contract that explicitly granted me access rights until the completion of a formal audited handover process, emphasizing that the company's unilateral revocation was both a breach of contract and a grave operational risk. Throughout this phase, I maintained a strictly professional tone in all communications. I refrained from threats or emotional appeals, focusing instead on facts, contractual obligations, and regulatory frameworks. The legal notices and complaints were drafted with precision to convey seriousness and readiness to escalate if necessary, yet leaving space for resolution through compliance. I knew that appearing composed and methodical would strengthen my position, both in legal forums and within the eyes of the company's board and regulatory authorities. While these formal actions were underway, I continued to monitor the company's infrastructure remotely. Using the emergency audit tools I had embedded during my tenure, I tracked system performance metrics and security logs, documenting any anomalies or failures. Early signs of strain appeared as unauthorized changes initiated by Mark Jr. began to destabilize failover clusters and backup routines. These real-time observations were carefully logged with timestamps, creating an irrefutable record of the operational consequences stemming from the company's dismissal of established protocols. Recognizing the sensitivity of this information, I secured encrypted copies of all critical evidence, including system performance data and email correspondences, on external drives physically stored outside the company's network. This precaution ensured that even if Thornton Technologies attempted to alter internal records or obstruct investigations, the integrity of my documentation would remain intact. The combination of legal pressure and comprehensive evidence gathering was designed to compel the company toward compliance while safeguarding my professional credibility. At the same time, I pursued witness statements from trusted colleagues who had observed the reckless actions taken by Mark Jr. These colleagues provided written accounts confirming my role in maintaining system integrity and attesting to the risks introduced by unauthorized system modifications. Each statement was carefully worded to focus on factual observations and avoid subjective opinions, reinforcing the objectivity of the evidence. Coordinating these testimonials discreetly was crucial to protect colleagues from potential retaliation and maintain the professionalism of the inquiry. Aware that clients depended on the stability of Thornton Technologies' services, I also drafted a measured notification to key corporate clients through my legal counsel. The communication informed them of ongoing infrastructure risks due to unauthorized changes by the company's new management, highlighting potential impacts on service continuity. This step was carefully calibrated, not to incite panic, but to maintain transparency and protect client interests. It established an ethical boundary, signaling that I was acting not only to protect my rights, but also to uphold the standards of service clients expected. Simultaneously, I secured a consulting agreement with a reputable competitor in the IT infrastructure sector. This move provided financial stability and professional continuity, ensuring I was not vulnerable to retaliatory tactics by Thornton Technologies. It was a strategic safeguard, reflecting my commitment to maintaining a high level of professional integrity and independence throughout the unfolding dispute. Despite these escalating formal actions and mounting evidence against Thornton Technologies, the company's leadership, including Mark Jr. and his father, remained outwardly confident. Their public stance suggested they underestimated the severity of the situation and the solidity of my legal and technical case. They appeared unaware that I was remotely monitoring infrastructure health and documenting every failure, preparing to leverage these developments in subsequent legal and professional maneuvers. Throughout this period, I disciplined myself to remain patient and professional, resisting any temptation to react emotionally or prematurely escalate matters. I understood that the strength of my position lay in the combination of meticulous documentation, strategic legal enforcement, and measured communication. The groundwork laid in this phase was setting the stage for systematic consequences that would unfold in the hours and days ahead. In essence, serving legal notices, filing regulatory complaints, and demanding restoration of system access marked a pivotal transition from evidence gathering to active enforcement. These steps asserted my contractual rights, highlighted the company's regulatory vulnerabilities, and established a controlled pressure environment. My professional response was transforming from passive observation into a strategic campaign designed to uphold accountability, protect critical infrastructure, and safeguard my professional interests, all without sacrificing composure or credibility. Within 24 hours of my termination, the first unmistakable alerts began flooding the network monitoring dashboards I had set up years ago, systems I had designed specifically to detect anomalies before they escalated into outages. The failover clusters, the very backbone of Thornton Technologies' resilience, were flickering with critical errors. The automated logs indicated that multiple failover nodes were offline, triggering cascading warnings that, if left unaddressed, would result in widespread service disruptions. I wasn't surprised, but I was keenly aware of the gravity. These failover systems were engineered to handle sudden outages seamlessly, redirecting traffic, balancing loads, and maintaining uptime. Their sudden degradation was a direct consequence of the unauthorized decommissioning and configuration changes Mark Jr. had initiated without proper risk assessment or fallback strategies. The infrastructure was unraveling exactly as I had predicted. Meanwhile, my secure communication channels began relaying reports from several of Thornton Technologies' major clients. These were not minor complaints. They involved significant service interruptions affecting critical business operations, including data access failures and intermittent connectivity issues. One client, responsible for approximately $750,000 in annual revenue, reported a complete network blackout for over an hour during peak hours, an event that endangered their contract renewal discussions. Another client, managing sensitive financial data, flagged synchronization failures across their systems, risking compliance breaches on their end. Internally, the impact was equally alarming. IT support desks were overwhelmed with tickets, citing widespread outages. Emails leaked among staff revealed a mounting panic, especially from junior technicians and middle management, who lacked the expertise or authority to diagnose or reverse the failures. The logs I had remotely accessed showed frantic, uncoordinated troubleshooting efforts by Mark Jr., who was desperately trying to regain control, but was thwarted by his lack of required credentials and institutional knowledge. Several calls from his office came through my legal counsel, pleas veiled as requests for assistance. I maintained strict professional boundaries, directing them to communicate exclusively through my lawyer. I understood the risk of direct engagement. Any informal help could be viewed as complicity or undermine my position. Instead, I focused on documenting every communication meticulously, preserving timestamps and content as part of an irrefutable evidentiary trail. While the company's reputation was quietly beginning to fray, I continued to monitor the unfolding situation remotely. Using encrypted audit tools embedded during my tenure, I recorded every system alert, error message, and unauthorized configuration change. These records were critical. They quantitatively demonstrated the operational degradation directly linked to the absence of properly managed failover protocols and the unilateral actions taken without expert input. The scenario was unfolding exactly as my internal assessment had anticipated. The $8.5 million in annual revenue supported by these systems was suddenly at risk, not through external attack or unforeseeable failure, but because of reckless management decisions and a disregard for established, documented procedures. I felt no satisfaction in this. Rather, I approached it with the clinical detachment required of a professional intent on holding an organization accountable for its choices. Concurrently, I prepared a confidential report summarizing these emerging failures, matched against historical baseline performance metrics and documented risks I had previously communicated to senior management. This report was formatted with precision, citing system logs, client outage reports, and email correspondences, all cross-referenced with the timeline of unauthorized infrastructure changes initiated by Mark Jr. The goal was clear: to create an undeniable link between mishandling and operational consequences. At the same time, I coordinated with my legal team to ensure the timing of formal responses aligned with the documented failures, reinforcing the professional and contractual gravity of the situation. This coordination was essential to maintain pressure without appearing opportunistic or reactionary. I also reached out discreetly to trusted colleagues still within Thornton Technologies. Their observations confirmed the escalating crisis. Systems that had been stable and well-managed were now vulnerable and failing. They reported seeing management struggling to respond, with Mark Jr. increasingly isolated and under scrutiny. Their witness statements, collected with strict confidentiality, added another layer of credibility to my case. Throughout this period, I maintained a resolute stance, professional, measured, and evidence-driven. I refrained from public commentary or direct interaction with the company beyond legal channels, understanding that any deviation could jeopardize the integrity of my position. The situation was fragile, the infrastructure was failing, client trust was eroding, and internal confidence was waning. Yet the company leadership publicly projected an image of control and denial, unaware that the consequences of their decisions were being meticulously documented and strategically leveraged. The panic on Mark Jr.'s face, should he have known the breadth of my observations and legal maneuvers, would have been justified. I had not acted out of spite, but out of a commitment to professional standards and contractual justice. As the failures multiplied, it became increasingly clear that the infrastructure's survival depended on expertise and experience, not impulsive modernization or nepotistic appointments. The next hours and days would be critical. I was prepared to escalate documentation, legal actions, and client communications as necessary, all anchored in the thorough evidence gathered during this precise window. This phase was not just about system collapse, it was about revealing the cost of neglecting proven expertise and the consequences of management decisions divorced from technical reality. The professional reckoning had begun. The moment we filed the lawsuit was a critical turning point. With Susan Marshall guiding me, we submitted a comprehensive legal complaint against Thornton Technologies, meticulously backed by an overwhelming body of evidence that left little room for dispute. The core claims focused on wrongful termination without cause and a blatant breach of contractual obligations, specifically the denial of my severance and the unlawful revocation of system access rights guaranteed until a proper handover. Our complaint was not just a letter of grievances, it was a detailed dossier referencing contract clauses, time-stamped emails, system logs, financial documents, and regulatory audit reports that collectively painted a clear picture of corporate negligence and contractual misconduct. Our legal team's filing included explicit references to the employment contract's severance clause and the access rights provision, both of which Thornton Technologies had ignored. By presenting these contractual breaches with supporting documentation, we established a firm legal foundation that underscored the company's liability. The wrongful termination claim was buttressed by evidence showing a lack of documented performance issues prior to dismissal, while the severance denial and access revocation were clear violations of the agreed terms. Susan emphasized that these breaches strengthened our position not only in the civil suit, but also with regulatory bodies overseeing IT governance and labor laws. Simultaneously, we initiated formal complaints with the state IT regulatory agencies responsible for supervising infrastructure compliance. These complaints detailed the unauthorized decommissioning of critical legacy servers by Mark Thornton Jr., highlighting how these actions violated internal IT governance policies and jeopardized compliance with data security, privacy, and operational continuity standards. The audit reports I had maintained over the years, including external certification documents, revealed that the infrastructure modifications inflicted by Mark Jr. risked regulatory fines exceeding $500,000. Our filings demanded thorough investigations into these infractions and sought enforcement actions to compel Thornton Technologies toward corrective measures. Alongside regulatory complaints, a crucial part of our strategy was the demand for the immediate restoration of my system access as contractually mandated. Through Susan, I formally requested that Thornton Technologies reinstate my credentials, master passwords, and encryption keys, privileges essential not only for my legal protections, but for the company's operational stability. The access rights clause was designed precisely to avert the kind of cascading failures now beginning to manifest due to Mark Jr.'s ill-advised changes. We cautioned that withholding these access credentials not only breached contract terms, but dangerously exposed the company to escalating system outages and potential data loss. Throughout all communications, Susan ensured our tone remained strictly professional and legally precise. The legal notices left no room for ambiguity, but avoided inflammatory language, framing our demands within a reasoned and factual context. We highlighted the evidence of the company's negligence and contractual violations, while signaling readiness to escalate the matter if necessary. This approach was deliberate. Maintaining composure reinforced our credibility in the eyes of the courts, regulators, and Thornton Technologies Board. Parallel to these formal actions, I maintained continuous remote monitoring of the company's IT infrastructure through audit tools and dashboards I had installed years prior. The data I collected was alarming but not unexpected. Critical failover nodes were repeatedly failing, backup systems were malfunctioning, and unauthorized configuration changes were compounding instability. These failures matched the timeline of Mark Jr.'s unauthorized modifications precisely, creating an irrefutable causal link. Each anomaly was logged with exact timestamps and preserved as evidence to support claims of operational neglect and risk exposure. To safeguard this sensitive data, I encrypted and backed up all logs, system alerts, and email correspondences on secure external drives stored independently of Thornton Technologies' network. This precaution ensured that attempts to tamper with internal records or obstruct investigations would be ineffective. Moreover, I coordinated with trusted colleagues who submitted confidential witness statements. These colleagues attested to the reckless infrastructure changes and corroborated my role as the sole custodian of critical system knowledge. Their objective, fact-based testimonies added weight to the legal proceedings without exposing them to professional retaliation. Aware that the company's clients depended heavily on stable services, we also drafted a carefully worded notification sent through legal counsel to key clients. This communication acknowledged ongoing infrastructure risks due to unauthorized system alterations and highlighted the potential for service disruptions. It was crafted to maintain transparency and protect client interests without provoking panic. By demonstrating professional responsibility and ethical conduct, I reinforced my standing as a committed industry professional concerned with both contractual rights and client welfare. At the same time, I secured a consulting contract with a competitor, specializing in IT infrastructure services. This move was a strategic safeguard, ensuring financial security and professional continuity during the dispute. It also underscored my industry reputation and preserved my ability to provide expert services independently, strengthening my position. Despite these escalating legal and professional pressures, Thornton Technologies' leadership maintained a veneer of confidence. Neither Mark Jr. nor his father seemed fully aware of the depth and precision of the case against them, nor the extent to which I monitored and documented ongoing failures remotely. Their public posture underestimated the seriousness of the situation and the robustness of our evidence. Throughout this complex phase, I remained disciplined and professional, refraining from emotional responses or premature escalation. I understood that the strength of my case rested on meticulous documentation, strategic legal enforcement, and measured communication. The groundwork we laid was setting a controlled environment of pressure designed to compel corporate accountability while preserving my credibility and positioning for subsequent enforcement actions. In sum, filing the lawsuit, launching regulatory complaints, and demanding restoration of access rights were decisive steps transitioning from evidence building to active enforcement. These actions asserted my contractual and legal rights, exposed the company's operational vulnerabilities, and initiated a strategic campaign to uphold justice, protect critical infrastructure, and secure my professional interests, all executed with unwavering professionalism and precision. The fallout from the mounting infrastructure failures and the legal pressure I brought to bear against Thornton Technologies rapidly escalated, culminating in a decisive turning point for the company and its leadership. Mark Thornton Jr., having wrestled with the cascading technical crises for nearly 2 weeks, ultimately faced termination. His inability to remediate the deep-seated system failures, exacerbated by his lack of credentials, absence of institutional knowledge, and repeated disregard for established protocols, had severely damaged his professional reputation across the IT industry. I tracked industry forums and insider reports detailing the fallout, peers labeling his stint as a cautionary tale in reckless IT management, recruitment firms blacklisting him from future infrastructure leadership roles, and vendors withdrawing cooperation due to lost trust. His dismissal was as much a public professional downfall as it was an internal corporate decision. From a financial perspective, Thornton Technologies was reeling under the weight of accumulated losses directly tied to the failures triggered by Mark Jr.'s mismanagement. Contract cancellations and service downtimes had eroded client confidence, leading to a documented loss of approximately $1.3 million. This figure included lost revenue from terminated contracts worth over $800,000, combined with $350,000 in regulatory fines levied after compliance audits uncovered the unauthorized infrastructure modifications that violated data security and operational continuity standards. Legal fees and emergency consulting expenses accounted for an additional $150,000. These costs were meticulously itemized in reports I obtained through regulatory filings and industry insider sources, underscoring the extensive financial damage wrought by the leadership's negligence. Media coverage further compounded the company's challenges. IT trade journals and specialized technology news outlets published investigative pieces highlighting Thornton Technologies' operational missteps. Articles dissected the failed modernization attempts, the reckless dismissal of seasoned expertise, and the critical infrastructure vulnerabilities exposed by the crisis. Industry analysts quoted in these publications emphasized the dangers of nepotism overriding professional competency, warning other companies of the risks involved in undermining institutional knowledge. Internally, Thornton's leadership faced increasing shareholder scrutiny, with board meeting minutes leaked anonymously, revealing heated debates over governance failures and risk management lapses. Compounding this, confidential testimonies from additional former employees came to light, exposing a pattern of wrongful terminations under cost-cutting initiatives that had disrupted key operational units beyond IT. These statements, gathered by investigative journalists and regulatory authorities, painted a picture of systemic mismanagement and disregard for professional standards. Such revelations not only intensified regulatory scrutiny, but also fueled broader discussions within industry forums about corporate governance and ethical leadership. The cumulative impact on Thornton Technologies' executive ranks was profound. CFO Mark Thornton Sr., confronted by mounting backlash from shareholders and regulatory bodies, tendered his resignation amid growing pressure. I reviewed the public resignation statements and shareholder reports, indicating that his departure was precipitated by concerns over financial oversight failures and poor risk management linked directly to the IT debacle. Concurrently, news emerged of personal turmoil. Divorce proceedings filed shortly afterward revealed hidden assets, including financial accounts connected to the withheld $118,000 in deferred benefits owed to me. This personal unraveling of the Thornton family underscored the far-reaching consequences of their miscalculations. As for the $118,000 in deferred benefits, my legal team successfully negotiated its full recovery. The settlement agreement, backed by the exhaustive documentation and legal claims we had compiled, mandated immediate payment and served as a formal acknowledgement of the wrongful withholding. This financial restitution was not merely a personal victory, but an affirmation of contractual enforcement and professional accountability. The settlement terms were incorporated into the public court record, further reinforcing the transparency and legitimacy of my claims. From a professional standpoint, the downfall of Mark Jr. and the leadership shakeup at Thornton Technologies sent clear signals throughout the IT community. Veteran engineers and infrastructure specialists took note. Institutional knowledge, meticulous documentation, and contractual protections were paramount in safeguarding both operational stability and individual rights. The case became a reference point in industry seminars and workshops addressing IT governance, risk mitigation, and the perils of nepotism-driven appointments. The company itself was forced to initiate a comprehensive restructuring of its IT governance framework. Internal memos I obtained through industry contacts indicated the appointment of a seasoned chief information officer, external audits of all infrastructure protocols, and a renewed commitment to compliance standards. These reforms aimed to restore client confidence and rebuild the operational resilience that had been compromised. However, the scars from the crisis lingered, serving as enduring reminders of the consequences when expertise is undervalued. The entire episode reaffirmed a fundamental truth I had long embraced. Professional competence, fortified by careful documentation and contractual safeguards, is a critical bulwark against reckless corporate decisions. The systematic dismantling of the infrastructure, under inexperienced management, was not merely a technical failure, it was a failure of leadership and respect for expertise. The resolution of these events, while still unfolding in the public and professional spheres, marked a significant chapter in my career. It underscored the necessity of strategic patience, measured responses, and an unwavering commitment to professional standards, principles that would guide my next steps in the industry. The court ruling was a pivotal moment in this protracted ordeal, delivering a multifaceted judgment that not only recognized the contractual breaches, but also acknowledged the broader professional and regulatory ramifications of Thornton Technologies' actions. The judgment awarded me a total of $250,000. This sum encompassed my full severance package, damages for wrongful termination, and coverage of legal fees. The detailed calculation factored in the $118,000 in deferred benefits initially withheld, punitive damages reflecting the company's blatant disregard for proper procedures, and reimbursement for the extensive legal counsel required to pursue justice. This monetary award was a formal validation of the documented breaches and the professional harm I endured. Beyond the civil judgment, the regulatory authorities imposed significant penalties on Thornton Technologies, levying fines that collectively amounted to $500,000. These fines were the result of comprehensive investigations conducted by state IT regulatory bodies, which substantiated the compliance violations I had meticulously documented. The unauthorized decommissioning of critical legacy servers, the failure to maintain proper failover protocols, and the reckless disregard for audit and security standards contravened multiple facets of IT governance regulations. The regulatory agency's reports explicitly cited the company's failure to adhere to data security laws, operational continuity mandates, and change management policies, underscoring systemic lapses in infrastructure oversight. These combined financial penalties and legal rulings forced Thornton Technologies into an urgent and comprehensive restructuring of their IT governance framework. Internal communications obtained through industry contacts revealed that the company appointed an experienced chief information officer with a proven track record in managing complex infrastructures and regulatory compliance. This new leadership was tasked with overhauling existing policies, revalidating all infrastructure documentation, and instituting rigorous audit procedures to prevent a recurrence of the previous failures. The restructuring mandated transparent reporting mechanisms to the board and external auditors, reinforcing accountability at all levels. Mark Thornton Jr. bore the brunt of the fallout for his mismanagement. After a formal internal review, prompted by the operational failures and the public legal proceedings, he was dismissed from the company. Industry insider reports and IT community discussions circulated widely, characterizing his tenure as a cautionary example of the perils of nepotistic appointments. Lacking requisite expertise, recruitment agencies blacklisted him from future IT managerial roles, and his professional reputation suffered irreparable damage. This professional sanctioning served as a stark reminder within the sector of the critical importance of experience and institutional knowledge in overseeing mission-critical technology infrastructures. Simultaneously, Thornton Technologies faced a wave of client attrition. Several key accounts, representing substantial portions of annual revenue, severed ties following the public revelations and service disruptions. These clients redirected their contracts to more reliable providers, including my newly established consulting firm. This client migration reinforced the broader industry perception that stability and proven expertise are paramount in IT partnerships. My consultancy's reputation grew accordingly, benefiting from the trust I had cultivated over years and the professional vindication secured through legal channels. The media and industry commentary amplified the case's impact. Specialized IT trade journals and technology news outlets published in-depth analyses of the failures at Thornton Technologies, emphasizing the risks involved in sidelining experienced professionals for unproven leadership. Industry forums and conferences incorporated the case into best practice discussions on IT governance, risk management, and the consequences of ignoring institutional knowledge. This discourse contributed to a shift in corporate attitudes, encouraging companies to balance modernization initiatives with respect for established expertise and proper documentation. On a personal and professional level, the court victory and subsequent public validation fortified my position in the industry. The judgment included recognition of my intellectual property rights related to the proprietary system improvements developed during my tenure. This was a critical component, ensuring that my contributions were formally acknowledged and protected against unauthorized use or claim by Thornton Technologies or other entities. Retaining these rights allowed me to integrate these innovations into my consultancy offerings, leveraging them for future projects and client engagements. The cumulative outcomes underscored the efficacy of a methodical, evidence-based approach to professional disputes. By grounding my case in comprehensive documentation, contractual knowledge, and measured legal strategy, I transformed a personal setback into an authoritative call for accountability and professional standards. The resolution reverberated beyond my individual circumstances, signaling to the broader industry the consequences of neglecting technical rigor and contractual obligations. As Thornton Technologies embarked on its path to recovery, the case remained a touchstone for discussions about ethical leadership, the value of institutional expertise, and the importance of aligning operational decisions with documented best practices. My experience became a reference point in sector-wide dialogues, shaping how companies approach IT governance reform and conflict resolution. This chapter, still evolving in professional circles, reinforced that sustained success hinges on respecting the interplay of expertise, documentation, and strategic action, a principle I continue to champion as I advance in my career. Now, leading my own IT consultancy, I find myself in a position far more aligned with the professional respect and autonomy I always sought. My firm specializes in critical infrastructure management, cyber resilience, and compliance auditing, areas where my 15 years at Thornton Technologies serve as both a credential and a lived experience. Transitioning from a corporate engineer, constrained by internal politics, to an independent consultant was not an impulsive decision, but a strategic career pivot grounded in the lessons learned throughout this ordeal. Financially, this move translated into a 35% increase in income compared to my previous salary, but more significant than the numbers was the nature of my client relationships. I now work exclusively with organizations that recognize the value of meticulous documentation, proactive risk management, and the disciplined application of technology governance. My prior experience in designing proprietary network topologies, managing failover systems, and implementing disaster recovery plans has become a unique selling point. Clients entrust me with safeguarding multi-million-dollar infrastructures and demand the kind of strategic foresight I demonstrated throughout my tenure at Thornton. The consulting environment also affords me a healthier work-life balance. Unlike the high-pressure, politically charged atmosphere I endured, I structure my workload and engagements around clear deliverables and mutually agreed timelines. This professional freedom enables deeper focus on crafting tailored infrastructure solutions rather than firefighting crises rooted in poor management decisions. I maintain rigorous documentation standards for every project, a practice refined from years of defending my own work under scrutiny. This approach not only ensures transparency, but also builds trust and reduces operational risk for my clients. Reflecting on the entire experience, I recognize how indispensable thorough documentation and contractual clarity are in professional engineering roles. My detailed technical schematics, over 300 in total, alongside backup protocols and audit logs, were not merely internal tools, but strategic assets. They protected me legally and empowered me to hold Thornton Technologies accountable when my expertise was unjustly dismissed. This reinforced an essential professional principle. No matter how sophisticated your technical skills, without rigorous documentation and understanding of contractual rights, one's position remains vulnerable. The ordeal also strengthened my conviction that justice in professional disputes is best achieved through measured, evidence-based actions rather than impulsive confrontations. Throughout the process, I maintained composure, communicated through legal channels, and prioritized facts over emotion. This professional discipline preserved my credibility and enabled my legal team to build an airtight case. It was a powerful reminder that in high-stakes corporate conflicts, strategic patience and professionalism often yield superior outcomes. Moreover, the case underscored the risks companies face when they undervalue institutional knowledge in favor of inexperienced leadership, motivated by nepotism or cost-cutting. I've since incorporated these insights into my consultancy's advisory services, helping clients design governance frameworks that balance modernization with respect for legacy systems and expertise. My role now includes guiding organizations on managing transitions without compromising compliance or operational continuity, lessons drawn directly from the failures I witnessed at Thornton Technologies. Industry recognition followed naturally. Invitations to speak at IT governance conferences, participation in professional panels, and contributions to cybersecurity forums have elevated my profile. I actively share my story, not as a cautionary tale of dismissal, but as an instructive example of how professionalism, documentation, and contractual awareness can protect careers and companies alike. These platforms allow me to influence best practices and advocate for a culture that prizes expertise and accountability. Ultimately, this chapter of my career reinforced the profound impact that competence combined with strategic action can have. I now operate with a confidence born from having navigated a complex, precarious professional crisis and emerged stronger. The technical skills that once made me indispensable to a single organization now empower me to serve a broader client base, secure in the knowledge that my approach, rooted in calm, documentation, and legal prudence, is a model for sustainable professional success. This ongoing journey reminds me daily that professionalism isn't just about what you know. It's about how you apply knowledge under pressure, how you document your work with precision, and how you engage with conflict in a manner that upholds integrity and advances justice. The past trials have not diminished my passion for infrastructure engineering. They have sharpened it, preparing me to lead with clarity and resilience well into the future.